So Thursday is going to be a hectic day. We've got a lot of stuff to get done today, not only on the Malibu, but on the race cars as well. Vicky's got a bunch of work to do out in the office, and we've got a bunch of merchandise we need to get ready for the weekend. However, due to illness on Billy's part and the weather, we're not really sure where or if we're going racing. So while we're all trying to figure out what we're going to do this weekend, Uncle Bucko is up at the farm working on one of Dad's old John Deere tractors. There's a drain plug broke off in the block that Jeremy needs to get out of there for Dad. And today is evidently the day Jeremy's decided to clean out the back of his truck. Once and for all, Jeremy's decided to clean up his act. We'll see how long that lasts. Anyway, while Jeremy's up the farm helping my dad, it's tuning day for the Malibu. So me and June Pup hop in it and we take it up the road to get it warmed up. The first thing I want to work on today is getting the air bleeds tuned in for part throttle cruise. Because right now, this thing is drinking fuel when it really shouldn't be. And although the camshaft in this car isn't very big, for whatever reason right now, this thing sounds more like a solid roller cam than a hydraulic roller. And I have a sneaking suspicion it has a lot to do with the air-fuel ratio at part throttle cruise. So right now my plan is to take the car around the block, get it warmed up good, record the readings on the air-fuel ratio monitor, and then bring it into the shop to change the air bleeds in the carburetor. Now I kind of need to hustle today to get this stuff done because Tommy and Billy are coming over to work on the Falcon later this afternoon. And Billy just happened to pull in right after I pulled the Malibu in the shop, and just a few minutes later, young Thomas shows up with the Falcon. Billy decided it was best for him to take the 64 down and go get fuel while Tommy and me and Kenny and Jeremy work on the Falcon later. So I quickly go ahead and pull the 65 thousandths idle air bleeds out of the carburetor and replace them with 70 thousandths. Going to a bigger air bleed will allow me to lean out the air-fuel mixture at tip-in and part throttle cruise. And it was evident as soon as I fired the car up and drove it around the block, it made a huge difference. From 10.5 to 11.5 on the air-fuel monitor, the only problem was I lost rear brakes as I was driving back to the shop. So I put it up on the lift, checked it out, and Jeremy and Kenny bled the brakes, and we backed the Malibu out so Tommy could get started working on the Falcon in the shop. The Falcon needs the oil and filter changed, and it needs the rear axle serviced, because Tommy says the rear end's starting to howl in it. So Kenny goes ahead and starts draining the oil out of the crankcase, and Jeremy goes ahead and drains the fluid out of the rear differential, while Tommy and I jump in the Malibu and go down to see Mark at A1 to get all the supplies we need to get this work done today. I just hope he's having a better day today than he did the last time Jeremy came down last week. Well, well, well. Look who it is. Mr. Grumpy Pants.
Oh, quit it. I'm happy today.
That wasn't the case 3 days ago when Jeremy walked in.
What was that?
Be nice to me. I've
What?
had a rough morning.
You kiss your mother with that mouth?
What? No.
You're happy today?
Yeah, you want what?
Tyler, is that true? Tell me the truth, thing one. Where's thing two?
Thing 2 is on your mission. Oh, so 1 and 2 has been established?
Oh, it's absolutely established.
Oh, it is.
Thing one,
Yeah.
thing two. Your dad calls you thing one now? Tommy is going to need to deplete your entire stock
Oh,
Of-
great ass parts.
of old body style Chevy parts. Young Thomas has recently taken his old 93 Chevy short bed 2-wheel drive pickup to his own garage, but he's going to need a lot of parts if he ever wants to put this thing back together. Front end parts, leaf springs probably.
No, leaf springs are good.
Leaf springs are good? Okay, everything but the leaf springs. We'll take one of everything.
All right.
Forms with everything already installed in them.
Oh, you're going to take the easy way
Tie
out.
rod.
He's asking for loaded everything. Just go ahead and start ordering the stuff in.
Start getting it in.
One of everything. Tommy's short bed Chevy project should be able to keep Mark in business all by itself for the next 6 months. Old Mark's been doing a pretty good job at teaching Tyler how to push sales. He's always trying to talk me into some new gadget he's got.
So if he's thing 1 and thing 2 exists, that makes him Cat in the Hat, which means we need to get him a red and white top hat.
So while I'm in there, Mark's trying to talk me into all kinds of stuff he thinks I need for Uncle Bucko. So I called Jeremy myself. What else do you need, Idjit?
I don't know. It's not my menagerie.
I need
the trailer brakes. Is that just the plug?
Yeah, I need you to go over the dualies, the trailers, and when you grease the hubs this time, don't blow my seals out. Over and out.
They don't need to be.
So Tyler and Tommy helped me carry out all this stuff to take back to the shop to work on the Falcon. And this is where the wheels fall off my entire day. Now, when we get back to the shop, Jeremy's been working on the Dodge, he's been working on the Suburban, he's going over all kinds of stuff back there, getting everything ready to tow someplace this weekend, where we're not sure yet. And Kenny is swapping tires on the back of the Falcon, from drag radials to the slicks. And Kenny had everything ready to go, but Tommy had to go work on the Dart last night over at Jeff's house. So the Falcon stayed on the lift overnight. No big deal. When Vicky got up today, she decided she wanted me to take her into Pataskala to have lunch at the Nutcracker, so we did that, thinking that when we got back, Tommy would be in the shop working on the Falcon. We got a little bit of candy to take back to Harley's little boy Josiah, and he about had a stroke when he saw what Vicky brought back. I, on the other hand, about had a stroke when I found out that Thomas is still in bed at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so me and Josiah took a drive over to his house to give him a personal invitation to come finish his car and get it off my lift so that I can work on my car to go to Test and Tune tonight at National Trails. So what amounts to about 25 minutes worth of work has managed to tie up my shop and my lift for about 12 extra hours. The Falcon finally came off the lift at 3:45 and gates open for Test and Tune at Trails at 5:30. So I'm a little bit pressed for time to get the car in the shop, get it up on the lift, go over everything on the chassis, check my shock settings, and try to explain everything in video format so that people understand what it is I'm doing and why. It's a little bit easier said than done. All right, so last weekend when I had the car down at Edgewater, it did not have the Team Z anti-roll bar on it. And I knew it was going to be a problem going into it, trying to spray it right out of the hole. So I went ahead and put a considerable amount of compression stiffness in the right rear shock to try and absorb some of that shock and absorb some of that body roll and control it. And even though I put a lot of compression stiffness in that right rear, the car definitely still twisted quite a bit. So we're going to go ahead and go through and reset all my shock settings real quick to start from scratch with the new anti-roll bar. Now these shocks have two different knobs, one marked C for compression, one marked R for rebound. Now these shocks are made by Viking Performance and they're called Viking Warriors. Now they make two different models of dual adjustable shocks. There's the Warrior, which is the economy line, and then you've got the Crusader, which is a little bit more expensive, and they're intended for higher horsepower cars. But this one, being, you know, maybe a 10-second car, the Viking Warrior is plenty of shock and gives you plenty of adjustability for what you need to do on a car like this. Now these have 18 different adjustments for compression and rebound. Now obviously the rear shocks are really easy to adjust. The knobs are right there where you can get to them. However, the front ones, they're a little bit more difficult. You have to notch the lower control arm to give room for those knobs to pass up through the hole for the shock and to give you a little bit of room to get your fingers up in there to turn the knobs. Now it's important to realize something. Some people do this one way, some people do it the other. When I set my shocks, I go full loose and then count the clicks from full loose, that's turned all the way counterclockwise, and then count the clicks towards the tight side. So I start at 0 on compression, and on the front shocks right now, I'm 10 clicks from full loose on compression and 12 clicks from full loose on rebound. Then on the back, it's a little bit different. I'm 6 and 6. I've set the rear pretty soft because I want this thing to hook, and we're foot braking it, so there's not a lot of power being applied to it right off the initial hit. So you need to have the shock set relatively loose on the back. However, the front tends to rise pretty quick. So I've got the front end of it slowed down pretty good. Now, regardless of what car you've got and how much horsepower, what you don't want to have happen is you don't want to have the front suspension rise so fast that it tops out your travel and unloads the rear tire on the launch, okay? That's a very common problem. And a lot of people, especially bracket racers, are terrible about, well, I bought 9010s, I'm done with my suspension. Well, no, you're not. If you're really serious about getting everything out of your suspension and everything out of your chassis, you need dual adjustable shocks. It's very important. You don't want that front suspension to lift so fast that it hits the bump stops in the front end, and when it does that, it'll shock the chassis, and it helps to unload the rear tire. And you'll see cars that'll bunny hop. They'll leave real hard and they'll kind of hop and then take off again. That's generally because the shocks are way too loose, either on the front, the back, or both. So I think we've got this thing squared away. It's time to set it down, load it in the trailer, and I guess head to trails. We'll see what we get into tonight. So our home track right down the road from our house is National Trail Raceway, and they're hosting a test and tune this evening, and I really want to take the Malibu down there and see if I can click off my first 10-second pass. So I load a full fresh nitrous bottle in the trunk, and I back the car out and load it in the trailer. And then me and my associates hit the road. Now, the last time I had the Malibu down at Edgewater last weekend, the density altitude was really good. Today, the density altitude is about 1,000 feet higher than last weekend at Edgewater. So the car may not be quite as fast just based on the air alone. But the weather's still pretty daggone decent. I figure once the sun goes down, things are gonna get really good on the track, and I should be able to make a pretty decent lick, regardless of the fact it's warmer and the density altitude is about 1,000 feet higher than the last time I had the car out. Now, looking around, based on the amount of cars that are here tonight, I figured there's a real good chance that I'm only going to get 1, maybe 2 time trials, and I usually try and make a motor hit first. But tonight, we're going to bypass making a motor hit, and we're going straight to the juice. Just in case something happens and I only get 1 time shot, I gotta make sure that this nitrous problem is really taken care of once and for all. Especially since there may be some shenanigans later on tonight after test and tune. So this is the exact same tune-up I had in the car trying to go 10s at Edgewater last weekend. The only difference is the Team Z anti-roll bar, and the car picks up a 10th despite the fact that the air is 1,000 feet worse.
Well,
that's a personal best in the 8th, but it's still not where I need to be. I'm getting closer though. So before I left the house, I made a few last-minute shock adjustments on the front of the car, hoping to slow down the rise in the front suspension, but obviously it wasn't quite enough. So I'm going to try and make a shock adjustment to slow that front end down and get a better run at my 60 foot and hopefully get the car down into the 695 range. Unfortunately, there was a major oil down and the track was closed for the night. So unfortunately, my night at National Trail Raceway has come to an end. But my night overall is just beginning, because when I got back home, I found out I've got a visitor coming to see me tonight. When I first got this Mosier 9-inch put in the Malibu, Uncle Rob had called up a friend of ours to set up a little grudge race on the street, and tonight is the night that the grudge race is going to go down. This is Brendan, and this is his LS swap short bed Chevy pickup with a 6-speed and a blower. All right, Brendan, what have you got here?
I got a thing that's gonna beat you.
What is this pile? It's a 6-liter LS?
Yep, 6-liter LS. It's
So it's a 408.
no, they completely bought stock button in 6-liter, literally out of a plow truck.
Perfect.
It's got a better set of casting heads, a newer style intake on it, BTR cam. It's only 85. It's got some triple blower on it, obviously.
It's got a torque storm.
Yes, it sure fucking does.
Torque storm.
Yep, and it's got a T56 mounted behind it.
A T56. That's a 6-speed?
Yes, sir.
What's the low gear in that? Let me get your phone out.
Yeah, I don't
Go
even,
through your notes.
Yeah, I don't even know.
Typical
honestly.
squirrel. All right, so it's a T56 6-speed,
Yep.
6-liter LS with a blower.
Yep.
And you're looking to square up with my old junk Malibu.
That's the plan.
Now, Brendan's only 22 years old, and he's built this truck almost entirely by himself with his own 2 hands in his own garage. And despite the fact that it is a full-size Chevy pickup truck, this thing is only about 100 pounds heavier than my Malibu. So if you do the math, there's a real good chance that the power-to-weight ratio may be pretty close to the same. Depending on how well that 6-liter is tuned with the blower, the power-to-weight ratio may be tipped in his favor. But there's one thing about street racing. the most power doesn't always win. And while the power to weight ratio may be in favor of the truck, front to rear weight bias most definitely goes in favor of the Malibu. And that's most likely going to be the most important factor here tonight. Well, Brendan, here we are.
We're here,
Are you ready to get your gap?
I guess.
Gaptism?
Yeah.
We got my hood rat buddies and my hood rat photographer and my hood rat flagger. We're about to get down.
Yep.
All right. Just make sure he's up on his RPMs because he's stick shift.
Yeah, gotta put her in the catch-up, just let her fly.
Yeah, just put her in the ketchup.
A little bit of ketchup, not a lot.
So we're not going to pour a puddle or nothing. We're just going to scuff the tires back up and hit it. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Sound good, Brendan?
I guess.
All right, let's get her done. So we go up and scuff the tires on these things and back up to make our first pass. Now, even though the weight bias is in my favor on the Malibu, Brendan's truck's on a slick, whereas the Malibu is on a 275 Mickey Thompson drag radial, not the most optimum tire for street racing. So in order for me to make this deal work, the suspension and the nitrous ramp's got to be dead on. The shock and suspension setup that I had worked out really good, but the main thing was the nitrous ramp. I delayed the nitrous ramp 1.5 seconds and put it on a 1.5 second ramp. The only problem was Jeremy set the finish line at about 1/2 mile instead of 1/8. So I let Jeremy recalculate the finish line and we tried it one more time. On the second pass, Brendan's truck spun through first and through second gear, and eventually threw the belt off in fourth. What happened, Brendan?
Fucking supercharger problems. The damn belt came off. I think I touched limiter in second.
Well, can we limp it back to the shop and change it there? You got another belt?
Yeah, I do.
All right.
I'm just trying to get it so it's not gonna get wrapped around something, rip something else apart. Fucking belt came off.
Oh. Freaking Jeremy sets the freaking cone out at like 1/2 mile the first time. The second time was like 1/4 mile, but whew, that was a long freaking run, Slim. I couldn't make it to you.
That's a nice light you have there.
It's useful now.
Yeah,
I was
it is,
talking
isn't it?
shit about it. Now it's useful.
All right, well, let's limp it back to shop before we get arrested.
Belt destroyed?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's destroyed.
It's tangled.
This is why I have 2 spares at home.
Oh.
'Cause this shit happens all the time.
All right.
Must be an LS thing.
Oh.
It's a supercharger thing.
All right, well, let's limp it back to shop. We'll work on it back there.